Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere, and Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
You've always respected the paranormal, believed in it even. But at 40 years old, married, stable, grounded in reality, you've kept a healthy distance. But when a simple walk through a cemetery is followed by the unmistakable feeling of being watched, when it decides to close the distance, what then? Or when your pets start reacting to something you can't see, and then this thing they see but you don't is clearly circling the whole area, while all you can do is try to rationalize your experience until you feel its touch. What if it's not haunting your house because it's chosen you? These terrifying questions are the very ones posed by today's submitter for our finale of the Dark Paranormal, Season 22.
Live from Liverpool, The Dark Paranormal, Season 22.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the finale of Season 22 of The Dark Paranormal. And a big thank you to each and every single one of you for joining me on this phenomenal series. And when I say phenomenal, I don't necessarily mean in terms of our biggest season yet or the best stories we've covered, because one of those is dependent on what metric you look at and the other is completely subjective. I mean in terms of the absolute knowledge and certainty that this is now cemented as your show. We've historically tried to do that by asking for your feedback and acting immediately on it. For example, this season, we said from next season, we said we were going to turn the minisodes to bi-weekly, as in 2 a month. And you fed back you'd sooner Dark Realms went to 2 a month, and the minisodes remained weekly. And therefore, as I just steer this ship, that's the decision for Season 23, and Season 23 itself should cement the fact it's your show because it's from a collation of feedback from random questionnaires sent out to listeners from the network that the upcoming changes to Season 23 will be made. And people have asked with concern, does this mean the show completely changes? Well, I can categorically say no. Please don't think for one moment this will now become a phone-in show, it will be an interview show, it will always remain the Dark Paranormal. We would not take a show that you and I have built together, that we both have a strong history and affinity with, and taking it apart and building something new. That would be ridiculous. An example of the changes that are going to come your way, for example, I think I've mentioned this one, is we're reducing the number of adverts at the start of each main Dark Paranormal episode so that you can get right into the experience immediately. And every other change that we will implement is to do with your listening experience to make it A, better, B, fresher, and C, make you feel like you're listening to or watching a new and enhanced version of the Dark Paranormal. Some of these changes, like the reduction of ads at the start of the show, you already know about. Others, I hope, will be wonderful surprises. So please mark the date on your calendar. Thankfully, it's easy to remember. The 23rd season is on January the 23rd. And of course, the week before that, as normal, we will have a shorter experience as our pre-season show. By simply doing something that less than 30% of our audience actually do, you will never miss those shows, and that's by hitting subscribe wherever you listen to your show. And that's very easy to do. It supports the show, and it also means you never miss a single episode. Speaking of support, As the darkness retreats until the 23rd, now is the perfect time to trial our Patreon. In the show notes, you can trial our Patreon at any tier, including the highest tier, which would give you access to Dark Bites, the Patreon-only podcast, and its entire back catalogue of over 170 hours of Patreon-only heard content. Plus the very first 2 episodes of our brand new show on the highest tier, a video show After Dark, where I simply hit record and let it run for 30 minutes whilst delivering my theories on what we've heard the previous week. No editing, no intros. It's basically a flow of consciousness. And speaking of conscious, I am conscious that it's time to say, for the final time this season, lower the lights, make yourself comfortable, and most importantly, leave your disbelief at the door, as we learn all about the over-attachment. This story needs, nor will be given, any embellishment. It's an account of everything I can remember about the terrible haunting and spirit attachment that led me first to St. Mary's Church and then to St. Mary's Hospital. Now, before we proceed further with the embarrassing and horrifying details, I'll need to give you the relevant lowdown on this old fellow, a phantom once befriended, because trust me, you will have questions. First, I don't do and have never done LSD or any other hard drug. I mention this not in judgment of others, but because it tends to be one of, if not the very first, thing that people ask after hearing this story. I was not intoxicated in any manner when this happened. Second, although I am bipolar, there was and still is not any history of auditory or visual hallucinations. Furthermore, this was not mania, nor was this a depression. I was 40 years old, and I'd been through both extremes many times. I know all too well what they are. This thing here, well, this was a new type of terror. Lastly, I've always believed in and respected the paranormal. I didn't instigate this situation in any conscious way. I wasn't using a spirit board, a ghost box, or some electromagnetic field detector. I did not attempt to summon anything. Okay? All right. Here we go. This was a life-changing experience that began a few days after my wife and I drove through a local cemetery to look for an old family plot. I walked around the grounds respectfully as she waited in the car. I saw many local last names I recognized and some that I did not. When I couldn't find what I was curious about, I made my way back to the car and we went home. This was the middle of the day. Nothing too scary, right? A few days later, whilst washing dishes alone, I suddenly had a strange and strong feeling that I was being watched. It was a very brief moment, which wouldn't have lasted more than 2 or 3 seconds. I wasn't about to worry about it though, because hey, these things happen to everyone from time to time, right? It was probably a temporary equilibrium imbalance. No big deal, I just went on with my chores. However, in just a few hours, it would happen again. And then again. I foolishly shrugged it all off and somehow managed to convince myself that my ears just needed to be cleaned. So I did that, but it didn't help. That night, I'm watching my favourite sitcom while my wife and our 2 cats are fast asleep. The TV was at a low volume and everything else in the house was quiet. I was learning some new scientific principles from my favourite fictional physicists when I started to hear a steady clicking noise coming from the kitchen. To my mind, it resembled the sound animal claws will sometimes make when a pet walks across tiled flooring. Definitely weird. Our cat, Gracie, quickly jumped from her slumber to run over to investigate. When I followed to see what was happening, I saw her intensely staring at the floor, but nothing was there. We keep a clean house, by the way. There are no critters here, other than our two adorable fluffy ones. After a minute or two, Gracie gave up her hunt and returned to her cosy nook on the recliner. This would be the last incident I would be able to dismiss as coincidental, as no sooner had I gone back to the comfort of the familiar TV than I felt something touching me. The sensation had a distinct pressure, a very specific weight that's still difficult to explain. Perhaps it can be best described as a warm, almost electric, persistently moving vibration localized to the energy center located below the navel, also known as the sacral chakra. To speak plainly, it was as if something invisible had somehow been able to get immediately through my clothes, directly to my skin, and was trying to have sex with me. Yes, I know how that sounds. But this wasn't the tickle of a stray hair, or some thread that came loose from my clothing. It wasn't the itch of dry skin. There was no mistaking what I felt. When the incident was over, I sped right through the state of shock and crossed almost immediately over into its neighbouring state of panic. I then did what most people do when we feel scared and helpless. I grabbed my phone with intent to find magical answers and internet cures. But I was just staring at the blinking cursor on the screen. I had no idea what to even search for. How was I seriously supposed to ask a search engine if ghosts can have sex with people? Well, once I gathered the courage to press go, one thing frantically led to another, and I very soon stumbled upon the vast, complicated topic of demons and demonic energy. Specifically, it would be the information about the entities known as the succubi and the incubi that would grab my attention. I suppose you could say that I took a cursory crash course in the behaviour of unpleasant spirits. While by no means would I go on to earn a doctorate in demonology, I would learn that a succubus is a female sex demon and an incubus is its male counterpart. These entities, which can feed on energy stored down there in the sacral chakra. I was surprised to learn that I was not alone in suffering an attack of this kind, and that others have lived through the same or something similar. Many had no history of mental illness. My experience differed from what the literature described in a striking way. Nearly every article I found stated that entities such as these most commonly first appear in vivid dreams. I was fully awake when this happened, and I'd not been having any nightmares at that time. So, was my experience an anomaly? Or could it be that this, much like most everything in life, was not a one-size-fits-all phenomenon? Over the coming days, there would be similar accounts that became both stronger and longer in duration. The entity grew increasingly confident. It held me down and was somehow able to keep my legs from moving. At one point, I could even feel it in my mouth. This was not fun, nor any sort of vivid daydream. My wife witnessed several of the attacks, and if you want to talk about embarrassment on a monumental scale, well, this would be it, and more would be to come. We had to notify my mum because, to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to survive this. She would end up staying with us for a few days. To be safe, we tried a trusted home remedy for ridding oneself of unwanted spirits. We burned sage in each room of the house, but, as I suspected, whatever this was, it was attached to me personally. It left my family alone, and for that I'm thankful. I was so frightened, physically fatigued, and mentally exhausted that I actually sought out a priest. That was a bizarre experience all on its own. It had been decades since I'd seen the inside of St. Mary's Church, where the three of us went to meet the priest. When we arrived, God's house was empty. We walked in and sat in the first pew, mere feet away from where I was baptized, and would later receive my first Holy Communion. Truth be told, I never actually took the sacrament. I spat it out during the ceremony. So now that I think about it, maybe I did deserve to have a monster follow me around day and night. In my defense, though, the wafers being used to symbolize the body of Christ in the 1980s were made of some strange substance, which both resembled and tasted like styrofoam. Picture a flat, circular packing peanut with a generic cross carved into it. When I think of the Catholic Church, all of its imagery of guilt, I'm surprised that they wouldn't just carry it that extra mile and make the picture of a full crucifix. In any event, I waited there for some time, but no one came out to greet us. So we started to leave. And that's when I saw our Father arriving. He was not in heaven, no, he was in the parking lot. After speaking a few words, the priest placed a hand on my head and mumbled something which sounded like a prayer, but could just as easily have been his weekly grocery list. Maybe it was a discount exorcism, a dollar store banishment, I don't know. Whatever he meant for it to be, it didn't work. In fact, the situation would soon become much worse. The encounters grew extremely intense and they did not stop. I could now feel the thing everywhere. Everywhere. The entity was able to move, sway, and take control of my body. It threw me around, even against the wall when I wouldn't cooperate. So there lies the reason I call this an attachment and not a possession. My thoughts were my own. My preferences, opinions, stubbornness, and memories did not change. I didn't suddenly know things I never knew. I wasn't able to speak in ancient tongue or write in secret script. I was still myself. I felt hopeless. In a way, it began to seem as if this had been going on for years. I lost track of time. I've always been self-aware, and I knew what needed to be done. I told both my mother and my wife to take me to the emergency room, so I could put myself in St. Mary's Hospital for a 72-hour voluntary hold. I would be forced to tell this story at least 3 times that night, each instance to a total stranger who most likely went home to tell another 4 people. It was embarrassing, tiresome, and humiliating. Luckily, I was too terrified to care. The year this happened was 2016. My wife, Amber, and I met in 2007. And this would be the first and only time to date we would be sleeping under different roofs. I gave her a tearful hug and kiss goodnight as I stood to be taken through those inpatient doors. My mum was visibly shaken. It broke my heart then and still does now, to think about just how upset she was. But I also knew this was the right thing to do. I gave her a hug as well. They would later tell me that they kept my younger brother, who lives out of state, abreast of the situation via text messages. I know that throughout my life, I should have done better for him, and I'm ashamed when I wonder what he thought about all of this. The nurses said it was time to go, and the doors closed. Personally, investing felt like something I'd get to later. Like a lot of people, I was focused on where my money was right now, not where it could be going. What changed for me was realizing that starting small and staying consistent matters much more than trying to know everything up front. You guys know I've worked with acorns before, I know them well, I know how diligently and ethically they work, and I've just been going through their app, and believe me, I genuinely love how simple it is and how approachable it feels. Acorns is a smart way to give your money a chance to grow. grow without needing a finance degree or hours of your time. You can sign up in minutes and automatically invest spare money, even spare change, and adjust how often you're investing as your life changes. A feature that blew me away on the app is the Acorns Potential screen. It helps you understand the power of compounding over time and makes the idea of long-term investing feel calm, clear, and achievable. Acorns grows with you, supporting your big goals and your small goals. And it keeps everything in the one place so you're not juggling multiple finance apps. If you've been waiting for the right time to start, this is your sign. Sign up now and Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. Join over 14 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $27 billion. Head to acorns.com/darkparanormal or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. T2 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age, and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results will vary. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/darkparanormal. Today's episode of The Dark Paranormal is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it. So your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Companies and affiliates' potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
I used to love my morning coffee until it stopped loving me back. The bloating, the discomfort, it just wasn't worth it anymore. Then I found Everyday Dose, coffee with benefits. It's real coffee blended with mushrooms, collagen, and nootropics. Now I get my morning ritual without the crash or the discomfort. The Black Friday sale is on. Get 61% off your first Coffee Plus starter kit, a free A2 probiotic creamer, and over $100 in free gifts. Plus, you could win $100 cash or even get your entire order refunded. Head to everydaydose.com/podcast or use code podcast at checkout.
By the time the initial ER visit ended and the intake routine ran its course, it was almost 1 a.m. The psych assistants brought me to a room and immediately took my shoelaces. That's just safety procedure on a psych unit, but who knows? Perhaps they were worried I'd strangled the demon before the doctors could meet it. I went through that first night sleepless and restless. The entity's presence and energy was on me the whole time, and I felt very self-conscious about how it may look to others. Maybe that sounds vain and self-absorbed because obviously everyone on the unit was dealing with their own issues, but it's honest. It was a problem that I did not, but should have, anticipated. There were now other people around. I was going to have to fight off demonic sexual advances in public. A nurse took my blood and vitals early in the morning and then asked if I was going to eat breakfast. I over-enthusiastically refused and may have suggested that somebody throw holy water in the kitchen because that food smelled horrid, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one who thought so. I stayed in my room and I waited for the doctor to make his rounds. Yet another stranger I'd have to tell my terrible tale to. I wouldn't meet him until that afternoon, and he seemed young for a psychiatrist. Out of his depth with all this. But in his defense, I think anyone would be. I was in a stranger-than-strange situation with an entity attached to me. That was my point of view, plain and simple. He, however, had his own opinion. He had decided that what I was dealing with was not a sex-crazed spirit, but in fact was psychosis. In medical terminology, he said the sensations I'd been experiencing are called tactile hallucinations. In other words, I was feeling something touch me that, in reality, was not there. All of this led to a temporary change in my diagnosis from bipolar disorder to schizophrenia. Now, although I still don't agree with his assessment, I can certainly see and understand how the doctor arrived there. My meds were adjusted to agree with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM, which is the psychiatrist's equivalent to the Bible. When in a Catholic hospital, metaphors, symbolism, and irony seem everywhere. The next day, I saw a chaplain, a pastoral caregiver from the palliative care department. She was sort of like a soft-spoken spiritual advisor who wanted to chat about God, and I quote, only giving me things I can handle. She was a genuine, kind woman who you could tell truly believed what she said. Unfortunately, I was not as convinced. Now, I suppose I've never had a real sunny disposition, but as someone who struggles with depression, it's not easy. I felt bad for not having as much faith as she did. From my point of view, the sun wants me to only see the pure and pretty possibilities of being alive. And this, to me, is nearly impossible as soon as I open my eyes. I'm thrown into the endless battle for my very limited energy. A note here on depression, and perhaps this is a tangent, but it speaks to my state of mind, mood, and possibly demonic attraction. All objects, including humans, have a natural frequency at which they vibrate. This is a fact, but it's also something I don't know much about, so I won't pretend to. There are theories that say negative thinking can lower a person's frequency and therefore attract entities, which feed off those thoughts. So I guess the question here could be, did my depression attract a demon? I know I tend to keep a foot and 9 toes in the door of pessimism, but I was doing my best navigating life. 2 days into treatment, and I was still feeling this thing touch me. I was finally able to get some sleep, but I didn't feel rested. I was drained. I was devastated. And as an added bonus, I was now having the vivid dreams I'd read about. In a particularly jarring one, a smoggy mist gathered in the dark distance. As it slowly inched closer to where I stood, it began taking on a gangly, semi-human, androgynous form. It made violent forward movements and ominous sounds, comparable to a flag in the wind on a stormy night. And in it I knew that creature was coming for me. As it can certainly be difficult to accurately describe intricate nightmares, it can also be equally challenging to convey the impact they brought to you at the time of their occurrence. I would say that in the case of this one, if you can imagine a creature being made from air pollution that may or may not have once been alive, then you'd have a pretty decent image of what this thing looked like. It leapt into the air, and in a cold split second we were face to face. It stood and stared at me, heaving, seething, and drooling. It repeatedly screamed at a horrifyingly high and primal decibel level that could rival anything Hollywood has ever made.
You can't get rid of me that easy!
I woke in pure panic and shaking sweat to feel the entity on top of me. My entire midsection was intensely vibrating, front and back. I forced myself out of bed and shook it off as fast as I could. I walked like a frightened child to the nurse's station and confided in the psych assistant at the desk. He was extremely busy scrolling on his phone and was kind enough to give me some extremely helpful advice, the most thoughtful, uplifting, professional advice. He told me to go back to sleep. He was just another pseudo-therapist in pursuit of a clipboard and a title. But that seemingly large brain couldn't hold insight, manners, or basic human kindness. When I returned to my room, I once again felt humiliated. I sat on the edge of my bed with my head in my hands. When I finally looked up, it was the next morning. The psychiatrist didn't know what to do with me, and I couldn't really expect him to. I thought perhaps he'd send me for a neurological exam, but he was still leaning heavily into me being a schizophrenic. He persuaded me to stay an extra day, but honestly, I was losing what little hope I had for recovery. If it wasn't for my family, I don't know what would have happened to me. I was giving up. My father was a courier for the hospital at the time and would bring me a coffee each morning. I probably wasn't supposed to have caffeine. In fact, I'm sure of it, but I didn't care. I was literally fighting demons, and I needed all the energy I could get. Also, working in the human resources department of the hospital was my stepmother, keeping a close eye on things from the first floor. She gets things done, and I had half a mind to report that psych assistant to her. But that wouldn't have done anyone any good, though, and I had other things to think about. It was good to see them both, and I knew I was lucky to have support. I'm very appreciative. My mum and my wife Amber were my heroes throughout this whole horrific ordeal. They would bring me my favourite Italian food and stay each night until the very end of visiting hours. As I look back on all of it, I really feel for them. I can't imagine what they were thinking. I owe them so much more than I'll ever be able to give. When the extra day I agreed to was over, I was more than ready to sign myself out of that unit. The psychiatrist, however, didn't want me discharged at all. In a way that's rare because usually it's all about turnover in a place like that. They like to keep things moving and fill those beds like customers at tables in a restaurant. I entered voluntarily, however, and I planned to leave the exact same way. I just had enough. After the embarrassing scenario at the front desk, I kept to myself. To be honest, it wasn't doing me much good being there. Everything started to look ridiculous and feel like a colossal waste of time. For example, when I saw a counsellor playing hangman with his patients on a dry erase board, I just shook my head. Call me over-analytical, but a game in which its participants draw a hanging dead stick figure just doesn't seem to be an appropriate activity for a mental health hospital. I didn't take part in any group therapy sessions. I didn't want to play checkers, draw fruit, or knit potholders. I couldn't find a reason for any of it. At most, I could say that being institutionalized at least kept me safe for a time and spared my family from seeing me being spiritually tortured. The entity was still very present and active after I left the hospital, but I'd formed a grand master plan to fight the demon. This was to be a very sophisticated, mature, and next-level strategy for fending off evil spirits. Are you ready for this? Wait for it. I was just going to ignore the monster. I know, that doesn't sound very cinematically exciting and may even come across disappointingly anticlimactic. But trust me, it was not easy. It took time, it took patience. I kept busy doing things I'd always done. I mowed the lawn, did the laundry, washed the dishes, played guitar. If I felt something on me at night, I turned on the TV, stood up and shook it loose. If it was determined to continue, I had to force myself to overpower it. If Amber was asleep and I sensed something around me, I'd distract myself with anything I could. I'd reorganize shelves, learned chess, and had many fascinating conversations with our cats. They are much better listeners than most people. Managing this monster as well as the beast that is bipolar disorder proved to be a task that was almost Herculean. I struggled, as we each do in our lives. I fought each battle uphill, not expecting to win the war, but just trying to see an end to it. Gradually, the encounters decreased, and then thankfully they stopped. I figure the thing either lost its strength from not being able to steal my energy, or it just become bored with me. At the end of the day, whether this was a spirit, poltergeist, or some low-vibrating demon who thought it made a friend, I still do believe I was dealing with paranormal activity of some kind. It was a new type of terror, one that I don't fear anymore. Michael. Well, Michael, thank you so much for giving us our Season 22 finale. That was absolutely terrifying, and how you managed to get through that, I've no earthly idea. Now, you will notice within Michael's experience, dotted throughout there are attempts of brevity, or small jokes that Michael tries to throw in. Now, people may say, why would you put those in if this is genuine? But for me, they are small validators that this is a genuine experience. And the reason for that is because I know personally any traumatic event that's taken place in my life has only been survivable through an attempt of humour. But when you become aware of that and you hear those moments, such as in Michael's story, they actually make you sad because you realise why they're there. Now, even by the close of Michael's story, we're unsure if we're dealing with a succubus or an incubus, but I guess that's kind of irrelevant when you're on the other side of it. What is interesting is the way Michael had some very good theories about why this may have taken place, i.e., his mental state not being in the best place, his potential low vibrations attracting low vibration entities. But as Michael says himself, we will never know. Although we will hypothesize the hell out of this, I guarantee you that. But Michael, thank you so much for providing us with the season finale for season 22. Also, to let people know, Michael's also typed up his experience and placed it on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. So if anyone does have an unlimited Kindle account, you can read that for free by searching for The Overattachment by Michael S. Landrio, and the surname is Landrio. And I cannot wait for our next edition of After Dark for our Patreons to look more in detail into this particular email. Because ever since reading it, there's something about it that still makes me feel uneasy. And as yet, I can't put my finger on it. But hopefully by the time I come to record that show, I will. And so, with Michael's experience, we draw season 22 to a close. And we'll be back with the 23rd season on the 23rd of January. Don't forget, if you have your own personal paranormal experience you want to share with the show, either click the link in the show notes or go direct to thedarkparanormal.com and you'll find a link in the top bar there to submit your experience. If you have any feedback for the show, you can email us at contact@thedarkparanormal.com. And as I said at the start, the downtime in between seasons is the perfect time to give a Patreon trial a go. So click the link in the show notes and don't completely miss out on the darkness over the next 3 weeks. For our Patreons, I'll speak to you again on Sunday for another installment of your Patreon show, Dark Bites. And for everyone else, please hit that subscribe button and remember, the 23rd of January, we return, let's say, refurbished. Until then, remember, whenever you're talking about the paranormal, always leave some of your disbelief at the door. And until next season, take care.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.